and welcome to the Crate and Crowbar. It's episode 130 of the Crate and Crowbar, a PC gaming podcast, being recorded on, I have to check the date, the 23rd of February 2016. I'm Marsh Davis. I'm joined this evening by Tom Francis.
Hello.
And Chris Thurston.
Hello.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
What's the news this week?
The news this week is yet another, wow, virtual reality is expensive story. This time brought to you by HTC and Valve.
How much is it going to cost?
$800.
Oh my god!
I said that partly in the podcast questioning voice and partly in like the Dr. Evil demand voice.
A good compromise. It's kind of reasonable, really, isn't it? I mean, I'm obviously heartbroken that it's that expensive, but it probably makes sense.
Relative to the Oculus, it makes sense, I think. I feel like, at the risk of being overly pro-Vive, $600 is still a huge amount of money, and you don't get motion controls, you don't get the walking around thing.
Oh, is it definitely confirmed that that $800 then includes all of the little bits and
Yeah,
bobs?
you get the two motion controllers, the lighthouses that let you do room size VR, and obviously you can still do sitting down VR with that as well. So if you're going to spend more than $600 on a thing, it might as well do everything.
Yeah.
The notion that was knocking around a while ago now, years ago even, about, can VR become this big mainstream proposition? Can it be something that people have en masse rather than simply, a few enthusiasts? Now seems like a complete joke. Not only because of the price of the Vive itself, but because of the type of PC you need to be able to run it.
Yeah.
Like the number of people who can afford it is small. The number of people who can afford the PC you need to run it is small. So it seems sort of, despite how exciting it is, and it is really exciting, the notion that it was ever destined to be anything other than a really niche thing seems a bit lost now.
In its first generation, at least. I think that's the real thing, is if you're looking to sort of like save money on VR, probably the answer is not to get the Oculus, but just to wait some years. Like, it's just not going to be... I don't think it's going to be that huge a deal to sort of miss out on it for a few years, because it's not like... There won't be a huge number of games that have been in development for 3 years that use VR until 3 years' time, pretty much. So it's going to be like a lot of experiments, a lot of, it'd be cool being on the frontier of anything and, discovering things for the first time, but it's going to be a lot of experiments, a lot of things that don't quite work, a lot of things that are sort of promising that haven't been taken far enough. And by the time the sort of games library is substantial and really unmissable, I think the price will be probably a lot more reasonable. And I think it will still require the same power computer, but in those days, in 2 years' time, that computer is not going to be as expensive. Have you guys done the performance test thing? Because there's now
No,
Steam
I haven't actually.
Have released a sort of free thing that you can run to check whether your PC is good enough for VR.
I looked at the stats of somebody who had come into the green, and it seemed like I would be able to squeeze into that, but I don't know if, well, it depends where I'm living, I don't know if the room size is going to be adequate. That's the main thing. Although I don't necessarily want to play the games which exploit room level movement. I'm quite happy just playing games that look well 3D, but I'm sitting down. That's fine.
I think I don't really care about walking around, but I really do care about the motion controls, about like reaching into space and doing something in a specific position. I'm almost more excited about that than I am about the whole thing that goes on your head.
Yeah.
Like if I was just buying the controllers on their own, I would do that. And yeah, that the feeling of sculpting something in 3 dimensions with your hands is amazing, and drawing a bow and firing an arrow by doing the actual motions you would is really cool. And I think that's going to be the most exciting part of the games that come out for it. It's going to be.
People can find out for themselves how awesome this is, can't they, Christopher?
They can, Martin. Sorry for the shameless plug, but we do. PC Gamer does have, if you're in the UK, the first ever, I believe, public demo of the retail version of the Vive on show at the PC Gamer Weekender in London on the 5th and 6th of March, which is the kind of expo for PC gaming that we're putting on. It's our first event of this type for a long time, and the first ever of this scale. But that's 2 weeks away now, on the 5th and 6th of March. I'm looking forward to it. A bit nervous because I've got to run a live stream all day, which you can watch as well. But yeah, if you're interested in trying the tech, then we will have it among a variety of other pre-release computer games.
I think it's going to be a fucking great show, actually. Like, I'm not just saying that to, to butter you up, Chris, because I don't owe you anything. but no.
The years of butter are behind us.
Your mucky butter will always remain in my memory, though, Christopher.
Oh my God.
Can't escape it.
But it does sound like it's pretty good. There's loads of there's dev access as well, and it seems like it's going to be intimate enough that people who do go to it will have great access to things without massive queues.
Hopefully, yeah. Like we haven't figured out exactly. Well, we've got plans for how we're going to handle queues and things like that. It's the kind of thing you can never promise to completely fix at any event.
Kill every 10th person.
Yeah. No, I should stress. We've got some cool things. We've got Julian Gollop's going to be there to talk about XCOM, which can be kind of rad. Like he just wants to talk about what he thinks about XCOM too. And
That's awesome.
Come to trash it.
Yeah, I don't think he's come to trash it. But Firaxis will also be there to talk about XCOM 2 and modding and community stuff. So
maybe Graham will come to trash it.
Yeah. But maybe we can make them fight or something. Actually, I think they all like each other, so that's fine. And we'll have Cloud Imperium there talking about Star Citizen, and that's in addition to all the playable stuff. Obviously, I'm running a tournament gaming area where you can play various games, including Dota, League of Legends, Hearthstone, Street Fighter 5, and Rocket League.
Oh yeah,
in a variety of 1v1 tournament formats.
There was some really good indie stuff as well on the roster, but I've completely blanked what it was now.
We got like an indie area. We're gonna have a bunch of cool student projects as well. We reached out to a lot of universities. Got the National Film and Television School there, demoing stuff. It's gonna be fun. You can find out more at pcgamer.com/weekender. I had to record 4 trailers for Facebook videos, and I kept slipping into trailer voice while recording.
Oh, yeah.
It was a weird afternoon.
Sounded a bit Matt Berry then.
Yeah. Yeah, it goes a little bit dark.
Who is this Rinwick customer?
Yeah. No, seriously, yeah, it goes a bit dark place, but such is events life.
Can I tell you about the game I've been playing this week?
Yeah.
I've been playing several games actually, but in the interest of not just listening to me bark on like an idiot for hours and hours, we're going to intersperse them with your other experiences with your games.
But still be hours and hours. It'll just be 1 hour, then a break, then another hour.
Yeah, slightly more tolerable, diluted. But I've been playing Californium, which is a narrative-y, first-person-y thingy, where you play somebody who's a lot like Philip K. Dick in the 60s in California.
Is that a real mineral? I think it is.
I don't know. Maybe. I didn't bother
Write
to
in
look
and
at
tell
the
us.
I know that Californication isn't a real condition.
But yes, you play a writer who's struggling with life issues of various kinds. Your wife has just left you. I think your child's dead. Not a very good start in things generally, which didn't happen to Philip K. Dick, certainly. But it is inspired by his life. He's obviously the guy you play is a sci-fi writer of books that have not yet been embraced by the mainstream, and you're obviously taking a fuckload of drugs as well. And as you play, you walk at these beautifully designed spaces with lots of kind of nice 60s Americana, and it's flat shaded. It looks gorgeous, really beautifully lit, and beautiful palettes. I think it's made by a French animation company, actually, rather than what you would normally think to be a game developer. And you walk around these spaces and you talk to people. The people you talk to are 2D cutouts, 2D sprites, but they've kind of got this a really nice style of caricature to it. Obviously, kind of intentionally contrasting with the 3-dimensional backgrounds. But as you kind of talk to people and you begin to unravel psychologically, because you're on a lot of drugs and you're a bit paranoid, you start being able to open holes in space to other parallel universes. And
so it's Bioshock Infinite.
Sort of, but actually it looks cooler than Bioshock Infinite, because as you open a hole, it literally consumes that part of the world, and the alternate reality intrudes physically into it, and you can do things by you could remove obstacles essentially by bringing in a part of a building that has a door in it which didn't have a door in, but it's not dynamic. Like there are some very nice things about this. So as you go through these different worlds, eventually you get to cross completely into another world, and then you poke holes in that one, and then go through to another one, and they're quite interesting in that obviously they play on some of Philip K. Dick's fictions. Like there's a sort of fascistic state there, which worships Abraham Lincoln, and California has become its own country at that point, and they all have their own art styles and color palettes, and they look very distinctive. But also the way that the characters who appear in each of them are reconfigured is very kind of intelligent, I think. So in base level reality, you go and talk to your publisher, and he's saying, you're on drugs all the time. I'm throwing you like work, and you're just not getting around to doing it. I'm gonna have to drop you. But he's kind of buddy about it. But obviously, silently, your character has taken this as like the greatest wound you can possibly imagine. And so in this other reality, he's reconfigured as like a patsy of the pseudo-Nazi regime. But it's quite witty. It's quite delicately written, up to a point where a narrator intrudes, and that stuff is fucking dog shit. And it's really annoying because it's really heavy-handed about what's going on, and it casts a pall over the game as it reaches its conclusion. And the other disappointing thing about it is that the actual mechanism for poking holes in the world is, these guys are animators, clearly not game designers, it turns out, and you just have to walk around the environments looking for these little sigils, which may or may not appear depending on where you stand. And you click on them, and this the hole in reality blossoms at that point. But I suppose it's like a hidden object puzzle, like in one of those room escape puzzles, where you're just trying to find pixels in the environment. But there's no real logic to where they appear in a 3D environment where you stand a foot to the left of this thing and it's invisible, and you stand a foot to the right and suddenly it appears. There's no real intelligence that you can direct at an environment to uncover these things. Occasionally some of them do things which seem consistent, like bits of reality will start to glitch out around where the object is, and as you get closer the kind of glitching increases frequency. But that doesn't always happen. Sometimes you just literally have to be standing in like a square foot of space for no real good reason, and you'll see something. And it's really deeply annoying, and it's compounded by the fact that the game's very buggy, lots of collision issues, partly because you got these different bits of reality intruding into each other, and obviously the geometry doesn't allow for kind of you to pass through it all the time. You can break the game in a bunch of different ways. I think I had to restart it like 4 or 5 times. It's quite a short game, and each time you have to start a chapter from scratch. There's no mid-chapter saving. And I punched my keyboard and really hurt my little finger at one point.
Minus 10% to review score.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't even know if I finished it because it just cuts to what appears to be a skybox. I think it feels like it's a conclusion, but I don't know if credits been a roll or what. But I fell out of the level a few times and other nonsense like that.
When I finished The Witness, it just quit to desktop. And then I wasn't sure if it was a bug. It sort of seemed like, I quite liked it, but also it's exactly what would happen if there was a bug. So I loaded up again, and then ended up getting a different ending when I sort of went back into the game, and that also quit me back to desktop. Like, okay, twice. Does that make it more likely it's a bug or more likely it's intended?
Hard to know. I don't know. Yeah, so I don't know if I'd really recommend this yet, because I also don't know if a project like this is necessarily going to get the kind of after-release care that a game would, because it's obviously made by people who aren't necessarily game developers. I don't know.
So it's finally fully out?
Yeah, it's fully out. It's not in early access or anything, but it's just a bit broken. But it's a really fascinating setup and a very unusual kind of aesthetic take. Worth seeing, certainly. I don't know if I could wholeheartedly recommend it, but it is interesting.
You'll be fascinated to know that in writing this down for the show notes into the Notes app on my phone, once I got as far as typing Cali, it suggested Californium.
Oh, right.
Didn't suggest California, just California. So I think it's a real thing.
What have you been playing, Tom?
I have only been playing XCOM 2. And I realise a lot of opinions have been exchanged about XCOM 2. Listen to last week's podcast, which was very entertaining. So I think I'll just talk about what I'm doing in it, like the way it's worked out for me. I'm on the final mission, which I won't spoil. I'm an over an hour into it, and I got to the point where I was just like making stupid mistakes because I was so impatient to progress. Like, it'd just been going on so long. I'm just like, oh, come on, that must be it. And then rushing my people out without giving them an extra move to react to the 4 sectoids that they ran straight into. So at that point, I decided I should stop here and come back to it some other time. But my playthrough's been really weird. It was brutally difficult at first. It's actually all been one playthrough, the one that is still the same one where I failed the first mission 4 times. I mean, not technically, because you have to reload a game if you fail the first mission. But shortly after that, I lost my entire force on one mission through not understanding how evacuations worked. And I decided rather than restart, I would just reduce difficulty for a little bit and then carry on. And pretty quickly put the difficulty back up. And then, because I was just getting flawless ratings on every mission. And then when I put the difficulty back up, it seemed to make no difference for quite a while.
Oh.
And it's like XCOM just has a big snowball problem. The last one did, and so does this one, which is if your people are good, then they don't die. And so they rank up. They get better. And the better they are, you can only take initially 4 people on a mission, and then eventually, the faster you rank people up, the quicker you can get to taking 6 people on a mission, which is a massive, massive increase in your effectiveness and their ability to keep each other alive. And so it just snowballs and snowballs and snowballs. And the better your people are, the better they do, and therefore the better they get. And all up until you hit some particular, like, totally unexpected difficulty spike, or something that just blindsides you, some rule you don't understand, and then you suddenly lose someone out of nowhere. And then if you don't have any backups, you're kind of fucked. And I kind of went through that. I can't remember how I lost some good people, but I ended up having to field some new recruits. And what happens when you do that is it doesn't really sort of break you out of that cycle, because you still do okay, but just the new recruits die on every mission.
Oh.
Because the main difference between like a new recruit and a veteran soldier is that the new recruits just have no fucking health. I mean, they also can't shoot for shit, but it's okay. It would be fine if they're just useless, because the other ones are so good that they can pick up the slack. But they're useless, and they will just die the second anyone fires at them. So they end up just getting used up, and then you just go through new ones, and you don't get attached to them. So you have this really stark contrast between the people who are invincible, brilliant, ultra cool, you're super attached to them, and the people who have only just joined, so you're not that attached to them, and also they don't get any chance to prove themselves because they get utterly fucking slaughtered. So I had a long kind of procession of those before any of them stuck long enough to get anywhere. And I had one cool mission, which I won't describe in any great detail because I videoed the whole thing, and you can watch it, and I'll put it in the show notes, where my main team didn't die, but they all got injured in the latest mission. And the latest mission was one that I'd done whilst another mission was pending. And you just sort of can't pass up missions. I actually found out what the consequences are, and they are severe if you don't do a mission. So I had to do another mission immediately afterwards. So even though some of my people were only injured for like one day, there was no way to wait for them to recover. I had to take someone onto this new mission. I didn't even have enough people. I had like 3 people in base. So I had to hire 3 complete newbies who had no skills at all. And I had actually one good person who was just, on the bench for that mission. So he became the kind of squad leader, and basically just had my B team. And then I had a pretty tough and difficult mission that just went in several bizarre directions. So that was like the one time that I did a mission without the main people. And then all my main people got better again, and I never had to use anyone else ever again.
Oh, right, okay.
I didn't have any psychics, so I eventually trained a psychic and brought them along. And they were getting really good. Psychics are a bit weird. They don't level up from combat. You have to just train them in a pod, like back at base, and they just take a certain amount of time. And so there's no real advantage to fielding them. Like, it's not necessarily good for them to get kills. You don't need to sort of get them out there to get experience. So it was okay to kind of leave one just leveling up in the background.
Stewing.
And then, and then only bring her out when she was actually useful. And she had domination, which is permanent mind control of an enemy unit, which is fucking amazing. And then she got fucking destroyed in one shot by a sector pod. And again, it's because she's new. She just hadn't had a chance to level up much. And if they're not veterans, they just get immediately killed by shots you can't predict. So I only had one really. The difficulty's been all over the place. Mostly really easy. Not too easy actually. It's been to the point where I'm scared of losing, but I don't lose. And
that's ideal, I think. Isn't it?
Well, except I don't lose anyone most of the time, and so I haven't lost a major person in a very long time, except someone from like the reserves. And that doesn't feel like an ideal XCOM experience. I kind of want to be losing just like one person every 3 missions or something like that. Like just enough to keep me to have a story. My story is just these people were just fucking great again and again and again, and then they got so good that they just couldn't be killed, and again and again and again. And the one time that I got really fucked was through basically experimenting a little bit. And so you start some missions in concealment, and concealment means that you can see the enemies before they see you, which is a huge deal because usually when you run into some enemies, they get a move to kind of go into cover, and then they're all spread out, so you can't get them all with a grenade, and they're all in cover, so you can't hit them very well. And then if you don't take them all out, obviously in your turn, then they will have a turn against you, and that's when you take damage. So if you can ambush them and kill them all in one go because they're all clustered up, then you don't take any damage, which is what part of the reason why people have been doing so well. And I had concealment, and we just came across a turret, and it's on top of a building that we don't need to get past. We have a time-limited mission to get to an objective. And so I just thought, we don't have to destroy that turret. If we do, it breaks our concealment permanently. Like everyone from then on in the whole mission will always see us coming. And we're under time limit, so we don't really want to stop and fight something we don't need to fight. So I'll just sneak past it. We can easily sneak past it. We can stay out of range. And then we snuck past it, and then it revealed a couple of troopers quite close to the turret. So now, if we want to fight those troopers, it's going to alert the turret as well, and now we're fighting basically two sets of enemies at once, which is not great. And also the troopers aren't in our way. They're well out of the way. We can just keep sneaking past and get to our objective, and we're under time limit, so we don't want to stop if we don't have to. So we snuck past them, and then we saw it's called a pod of enemies, the little groups, like 3 or 4 or 5, and we found a new pod of enemies that were like, I think 2 Andromedons, which are these massively armored things that even after you kill them come back in a different form. And they were right next to the troops, which were right next to the turret. And so they were all just like clustered up. And at some point I realized like, we can't avoid these people forever. And these are like next to the objective now. So we have to do something. We have to get to the objective. We only got like a few turns left. And ended up, I can't remember what I did exactly, but I think I got into a position where I could throw a grenade at them and take off a bunch of their armor all at once. And as soon as they were alerted, it alerted the troops. I think it alerted the turret, but the turret was out of range by that point. But the turret just meant we couldn't take cover to the left. All of the left was off limits, basically. And if we took cover against the turret, we'd be exposed to everything else. And the third pod with the Andromedons and stuff, as soon as they got alerted, they alerted another pod next to them of a sector pod, which is a giant walker thing, and I think still the toughest enemy I've ever encountered. I think another Andromedon, a bunch of sectoids, and I was fucked. I could tell that. But the objective was just to hack something on board this train, and my specialist can hack remotely with a drone, so you just need to get somewhat close and then spend a turn to hack this thing, and then we could just get out. And you can throw down an evac zone wherever you like and just get your people out. So I was still kind of thinking maybe this is possible. And I had my sniper, Jen, who is the best of the best, you know what I'm saying? My people are incredibly elite and just superb. Most of them are max rank and have the best equipment. And she's like about 50% better than any of the others. She's just fucking incredible. She'll literally kill 5 people in one turn. And she's standing on some kind of like cargo crate. And I'm trying to figure out, like, is this at all doable? And I think we take one turn trying to do it, just like getting people into good cover as best we can, avoiding the turret completely, forgetting about that, kind of ignoring the troops because they're not the worst thing, and just trying to like focus down the really dangerous enemies. And take one turn doing that. And then on their turn, somebody just kills Jen. Like, not actually permanently killed, but she's bleeding out, which actually was the first time that's ever happened. Every other time someone, because they're usually noobs who are dying, they just get instantly killed. And so she's bleeding out on top of a storage crate, which is going to be really fucking hard to get to save her in any way. And then after the sector pod does that, it just sort of alerts another pod of enemies, which are a shield bearer, who then slams his fist into the ground and gives everyone 5 extra health, like just all of the toughest enemies in that area. And I suddenly realized, like, this isn't a case of like, oh, I can't fight them all, so I better get to the objective and get out. This is a case of I have to leave immediately. Everybody has to run away like this second, and we'll probably still lose some people. And the only upside will be we didn't lose everybody and fail the mission. And so I had to figure out, like, okay, with these, I had 6 people. One of them is lying bleeding on top of a storage container. And one of them was panicked during that turn, so I can't control them. I can't tell them to do anything at all. And everyone else is kind of scattered. But if we put an evac zone down like, is there a place we can put it that everyone else can get to this turn? And also, can we in any way save Jen? And it turns out because of some abilities of my specialist, she was able to remotely stabilize Jen. She had an ability called Restoration, which goes around and heals or revives everyone in your squad, which is incredible. You can only do it once per mission, and it's the ultimate ability of the specialist. And so if I stabilized her and then cast that, that would work, but it would end her turn. So she would need to, wherever she was then, that's where the evac zone has to be. We have to make sure everyone else can get there. And it took like sort of 15 minutes of meticulous planning. And I found there was one spot we could do this, and we could revive Jen. She could get down to it. Everyone could either sprint there or kind of stumble into it and get into the same square, and then accept the panicking lady because I just can't control her at all. So I think she wasn't, I can't remember whether she was like an ultra elite person or just like quite high rank. But basically everyone else just had to rope out of there, and then the one who's panicked was just left behind with no hope of escape at all. We were just utterly slaughtered on that turn. There was just like, 16 enemies in front of her, and they just had a field day. And so that was like the one time that it went so badly wrong that like it would have been a complete team wipe, except that I focused everything on just aborting the whole mission and getting out. And that was great. That was a cool story, and taught me a valuable lesson about leaving enemies alive and moving on. You can sneak past them. I haven't done that since.
My I think when we spoke about 2 weeks ago, I had my campaign that had started to go wrong, but I was exploring the reverse snowball. Like, how far can you reverse snowball before you're fucked? Yeah. And there's definitely a much softer "you're fucked now" point in XCOM. But that campaign,
it's a softer fucking.
Yeah, but that campaign has now reached its bad ending. Like, as in, it's over. Like, XCOM is fucked. And it's almost the reverse of that story, actually, in some ways, because I had a mission where I was down to 3 people. Like, I had 3 people. I had no money. I couldn't have more people. They're all quite high rank, but it's just the 3 of them. And if any of them get wounded especially on a mission that's not that important, if we get an important mission, we're dicked. And so, and it got that thing where it's like, it's the 3 of them, and then recruits will come and go when I can afford them, and then immediately all die.
Oh no.
Because the difficulty doesn't slow down for you. So it's, you're going up enemy tiers and stuff. And then I got this mission to like, it was like, you really shouldn't skip this, commander. This is really important. Pull some alien tech out of this environment, kind of thing. And I went there, but only had the 3 of them. Like, they were the only people I could send. So those 3 go down, and I like scout around in concealment and see, a pod of snake people, a big group of sectoids, a big group of Advent, including the shield guy. And it was like, I can't do this. The moment I even reveal myself, we're dead. So I just roped out again immediately. It's like, XCOM's leaving. And then later mission that should have gone well didn't. And it was one of the ones where you got limited time to get out. And I know how that mechanic works, but I just couldn't get everyone out. And I ended up getting no one out because one of my guys got mind controlled and then panicked someone else. And then I just didn't have the squares to, by the time I had sorted that out, didn't have the time.
Did they attack your other troop?
Yeah.
Right.
So, like, by the time I got on the squares in, I couldn't get to the shuttle. So I lost everybody in that mission. Oh, God. But I had enough money to hire 5 rookies, which is about as many as I could get.
Good luck, team!
Yeah, so I had these 5 completely new rookies. But the moment after I hire them, it cuts to, have you seen the thing that happens if it's gone to terrible shit?
No.
I don't want to spoil it, because there's like a whole cutscene. I mean, I think it's something you can have happen in your campaign and survive. Like, I think it's based on a dark event. But it creates this sort of scenario. It's a big disaster scenario.
Oh, maybe I have actually. I think I had a unique scenario early on, I think as a result of a dark event that was really cool for me because I was doing all right at the time.
So I think this is one of the several ways that you can lose if you can't win that. Because it involves it is at that point just it's sort of the equivalent of a base invasion in the previous game, and it is the kind of like, this is the kind of the fate of XCOM. But the way the mission is designed is it tells you, like, because we need you to win this, we're going to temporarily lift the restriction on injured soldiers so everyone can fight, and we're going to there's a system in the mission that I think is designed so that you can actually bring more of your soldiers in, which is the way that base invasion worked in Enemy Within, is that your squad size is actually effectively bigger because more soldiers keep coming. Because if XCOM itself is under threat, why wouldn't they all fight, obviously? And it's designed that way, but because I only had 5 rookies, there was no way in hell that they were going to do anything. And obviously, cinematically wants to set up this like dramatic shot at the start of like one of your best soldiers standing at the top of the ramp, but it's just some random guy. And I just checked the box in the options menu that means that when it randomly generates soldiers, they speak in their own language rather than in English, because you can set that and it'll use lines from the German localized version of the game or the French localized version of the game. But that gave the impression, because previously everyone spoke the same language, that XCOM had just fucking gone to shit. It's like no one knows what they're saying. No one knows what anyone's saying to anybody else. Like, and they're all holed up. Basically, I've got to prevent enemies getting into a zone for various reasons. If enemies get in the zone, we die. And it's rookies versus, and initially the first wave is just like regular advanced soldiers. And I'm like, maybe if this is like, maybe the difficulty's pitched a little bit lower for this, because it is, you know, it's not just, oh, you missed out on some resources. This is the end of the game if you fail it. But no, like behind them is this like wall of berserkers and like sectoids and armor guys and stuff, and just hordes of them. And like beginning of turn 2, one of my 5 gets mind controlled, and it's like I can't move back any further. And so the only thing that entire squad did was kill her. Like, they all turn, and, like, there's one guy shouting in German, and someone else is shouting in French. And, like, they kill this woman who was mind-controlled. The guy who landed the killing blow got promoted, because it counts as a first kill, and a rookie's first kill is what gets them their promotion to whatever class they are. So, he got a battlefield promotion, you know, slaughtering his thing, and then immediately they just got fucked. And then you set a pop-up, which is like, yeah, XCOM's gone now. Goodbye, main menu. But yeah, so I've now started again, and I'm actually having a much more successful run. This is still on veteran difficulty, I think. Much more successful run, which feels a little bit snowballier because people just aren't getting hurt, which is the bigger deal.
Yeah.
But I am really enjoying it.
I'm really looking forward to starting a new campaign, and I was looking forward to it because I could disable the tutorial this time, and I was tempted to do that even on my first run, but I thought, you know, maybe for some story stuff I should leave it on. But now I actually want to keep it on because I want to know if that first mission really is as hard as it seemed to me the first time through, like whether now I'll just breeze through it because I know so much more, or whether I'll still get my ass kicked.
I suspect you'll breeze through it because I did it again, and like it's actually interesting how much of a difference disabling the tutorial makes. Like, it changes the entire start of the game dramatically. Like,
do you still get story stuff? I mean,
no, that whole story thing doesn't happen. Like, it doesn't even show you the same cutscenes. Like, it cuts out. Like, I can probably spoil the very beginning of the game. Like, from you waking up out of the sort of cryo thing, the stasis you've been in, to, like, I think it cuts to the point after the Avenger has taken off for the first time. It skips everything up to that point, which is 3 missions or 2 missions and a lot of clicking around inside the Avenger. And obviously it gets you stuff much faster. It has a different first mission. Where you have to blow up a big statue instead of the stuff you do in the mission, and it's completely freeform, and you can get XP from it. So you start off in a much more powerful, because if you play the first mission right, because the first mission in the tutorial is staged, if you play the first mission right with the tutorial disabled, you will get 4 promoted rookies straight away. You get advent corpses straight away, which are really important, which you don't get normally. Like, you can do a lot better out of it. Also a thing I didn't realize from my first campaign is your starting location is completely randomized as well, and the continent bonuses are randomized.
Oh, right.
So, like, all that stuff is completely different. Like, my first one is in Africa, and my new one's in Asia, and it feels really different because rather than, you know, fighting through, you know, desert shanty towns every mission, I'm fighting through like a cyberpunk Beijing every mission, and it feels really different.
Awesome.
But yeah, good video game.
I've also been playing Prospect.
Speaking of cyberpunk,
not really,
with alien invasions that occupy the world.
That was the segue.
The Combine are quite similar to the aliens in
the Advent. Yeah,
that's true.
They should have called the Avatar project the Advent Calendar. Sorry, Marsh, that just came to me.
XCOM blown off the face of the earth
yeah.
for that pun. Prospect is it started out as a mod slash expansion pack for Half-Life 2. It continues some of the story elements of Half-Life 2. You take on the role of Shepard, who is the lead character in Opposing Force.
Adrian Shepard.
Is that his name?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know his first name was. And it's made by a single dude, it seems, and there's quite a nice origin story for it. I think it's actually is it in the next edition of PC Gamer that there's like a bit on how it was made? I think he used it as like a pitch to get work at Valve, and I think he sent the game across them in a suitcase or something like this. It's kind of a cute story, and obviously it's made by one guy, so you want to be sympathetic towards it.
And yet
it's, and obviously there was a bit of kind of head of steam around it when it was head of steam when it was about to come out, because it's been ages since a Half-Life game came out, and everybody's kind of keen on it, and they want, and this is, people were writing headlines that this is as close to episode 3 as we'll ever get. I'm like, I fucking hope not, because it really shows you how well designed Half-Life 2 is in all the ways in which it fails, because it doesn't understand the capabilities of your moveset or your weapons, how that interacts with the movement and health pools of enemies, and how those things, that interaction plays out within any given space. And it's interesting to play it from the perspective of analysing it as a piece of level design or game design, to see just how the elements of a really great game just don't function when they are, laid out in a particular configuration. Like, I think the health pools of enemies have been increased, which ends up just like you never engage in those kind of exciting trade-off moments where you dash into a group of enemies knowing that you can finish a couple of them off and maybe flank behind some scenery for the last one, and you can't do that because the health pools are so big that you run up to them and you empty like 2 clips into one guy and he's still there, and it defies a lot of the things that create tension in terms of like dashing. Obviously in Half-Life 2 you have a limited dash meter, which feels kind of weirdly archaic now actually, but that only works if that dash is placed in tension with some other game element. If it's just if your speed of movement doesn't get you to safety, if that doesn't allow you to counter some other element of threat, then it's just superfluous. It just means you're moving a bit faster for a period of time, but otherwise it doesn't affect anything. That combined with the fact that a lot of the spaces that you fight in are just really big, they're really long, and you've not got any weapons that have really any range facility, and so it feels terrible. It feels terrible to play it, and it's really frustrating and heinous. So yeah, sorry, sorry, one plucky little indie.
About time they're dressing down those indies.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, sorry. I feel terrible saying it, but it really isn't good.
Yeah, that's a shame. It's free, right?
No.
Oh.
No. I think it's $15 or something like that. But it's not as good as other free mods and expansion packs are.
What about that Minerva?
Minerva's great.
Right?
Yeah. Minerva's like on, maybe, yeah, I think it has a different kind of feel to it, but it is a quality product on perhaps almost touching the scale of Valve's own.
They hired him, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. It was good enough to hire him, certainly.
I thought so.
Yeah. I've also been playing Devil Daggers, but not nearly as well as you have, twat.
Sorry, I was a twat about that. I bought it last night. Devil Daggers is fucking great, is what it is, which is a... best way to describe it, the easy way to describe it is Quake meets Super Hexagon, I think. With a little bit of Serious Sam, I think.
Well,
yeah.
Yeah, I suppose so. It's like Quake meets Robotron, in that it's Robotron.
But it's time-based rather than score-based, so Super Hexagon.
Is it time-based?
Yeah, there's no scoring at all.
Oh, sorry, right, okay, got you. Right.
No. So it's a game about you. So it's so the sum of it is way more. It's the definition of a game that's way more than the sum of its parts, because essentially it's an arena shooter where you fire daggers in, like a spew of daggers out of your hand at infinite skulls forever in the dark. But everything about its visual presentation.
Sounds like my first marriage.
Yeah. Yeah. Tom Francis with the 90s stand up there.
What's the deal with skulls?
Don't know. Yeah. So Jerry Seinfeld's Devil Daggers is is made special partly by its amazing sound design and visuals, I think, but also by its sort of clever design all over. So you basically, I'm trying to think where to start with it. So the visuals, because basically it's been rendered in an engine that the developers made themselves, which looks sort of very 90s era 3D PS1 levels of jaggy, flickery polygons, basically. Like, I don't know what the word for that is, where something is 3D, but it flickers and sort of, shifts as it moves, a bit like your sort of monitor's broken, or you can't quite, display it at the resolution it should be displayed at. Even when you're running it at 1080p or whatever, it looks like it's running at a much lower resolution.
But that's a good thing.
That's a good thing. That is a really good thing, because it creates this sort of, someone described it as like it feels like, a game they would show on TV for a brief section in a crime drama where someone's surly son, who probably didn't do it but spends all his time in his bedroom and is really suspicious, is playing a computer game briefly. This is what they would be playing, and not even really.
It's got the right title for it as well.
Yeah, Devil Daggers. It sounds like, because it sounds like the name of a band you would come up with when you were doing logos in the back of your textbook in school.
Like the game in The Simpsons is Bone Storm, right?
Yeah.
It's not far off.
Satan Dick.
Actually, this could be called Bone Storm.
Could be.
All the names made of
It's
bone.
legitimately nightmarish, though. I mean, it feels kind of a really oppressive thing to be in, it's not. Although it is just kind of skulls and things that skulls with spider legs and skulls.
Sounds like my second marriage.
Oh God. But somehow the way that those bones are kind of cobbled together makes them look frighteningly inorganic. Like, there's a horrifying symmetry to some of the things, and the way they move is unnerving, as well as it being kind of like a cliche, metal album
it's
cover.
Not, it's not ironic. Like, that's the thing why it's so successful. I appreciate that maybe I didn't express why it's so good so quite articulately, but like, it's like, even though it's obviously a throwback and it's obviously sort of retro in its sensibilities, it doesn't feel. It's not like. Strafe is an example of this upcoming kickstarted sort of project, which looks great, but they're explicitly going for like a really ironic sort of 90s thing. Super Meat Boy did something similar with its the way it presented itself in its trailers, whereas this is like not. It's not earnest either, but it's like. It's shooting for a particular effect, which is like sort of nasty video games of the 90s. And it feels sort of genuinely like a piece of software that you might wonder where it came from if you just found it on a demo disc.
Yeah, it feels like a haunted piece of software.
Yeah, it feels like, or a kind of some weird kind of like glitch demo from that that would come with some software that you'd pirated or something.
Yeah,
like,
it's
it
got
has
a real kind of creepypasta kind of feel to it,
like
actually.
sort of deep internet kind of weird to it. Like the website for the game is, I think, it's very careful. You can't find out who made it at all. Like there's no information about the developers. Apart from the fact they're from Australia, that's all I know. Like,
oh right, I don't know.
Kind of, I don't know how deliberate that is to sell that effect, but there is that sense that it's sort of this subversive thing that you've just discovered. Good dropping. And there's some really nice, so, to give you a sense of kind of what you actually do, you're on a big sort of roughly circular disc in total blackness, and beyond the disc is just a drop that kills you instantly. And then at the beginning of the game, these sort of towers will spawn that are like a kind of mausoleum with like a upside down tentacle creature made of bone on top of it. And that'll split open and spew out skulls, which will chase you. And then you can destroy the spawner by destroying a red crystal on it. You can shoot the skulls with this endless spray of daggers, which can also be like a shotgun blast of daggers, but it's daggers that sort of vibrate unerringly out of your kind of like burning hand forever. A bit like hexing. And everything is screaming. And if anything touches you, you die instantly. And the game is just how long can you survive, which is where the Super Hexagon comparison comes in for me, because that's the game it feels most like. Although it's definitely filling the same space in my games habit. It became very competitive very quickly, which is what Marsh was referring to earlier.
I don't mind.
I'm on 172
Yeah, right,
seconds.
shut up.
But you get beyond that kind of initial level of like, oh, it sounds really scary, it looks kind of really unnerving, and it's brutally punishing, and it's actually also a really cleverly designed game, which is incredibly simple. but getting like it's actually I actually like it more than Super Hexagon in some ways because it's not quite as much about learning. Like Super Hexagon, getting good at it, and it takes a lot of time to get good at Super Hexagon. I never got that good, but that is ultimately a game about when you recognize what pattern's coming up next, what series of shapes is coming up next. You know, or eventually ingrain in yourself the series of inputs that will bypass it, and eventually you learn to do this input so fast you don't need to see the shapes. You just see the beginning of the run, and then you know that it's like left, 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 right, right, right a bit more, right, left, and then you're through it. And the best players can just chain those together forever. Instead, in Devil Daggers, it's about actually seeing through all the noise and the chaos in order to prioritize what you destroy and when, in order to keep the battlefield as manageable as possible for as long a time as possible. And so you start to learn behaviors. Like skulls will fly around in a big mob, but basically aren't a problem. There's loads of them, but you're probably not going to die to them unless you made a mistake because of something else. Then there's the horned skulls, which initially avoid you, and took me a while to figure out why they avoid you. And then the second wave, you get these kind of like hunter skulls that laugh as they get closer to you, and they will just accelerate and accelerate and accelerate on an erring trajectory at you until you're dead. And they come from spawners that need to be shot on both sides in order to destroy, that rotate very slowly. So they're quite hard to take out the spawners very quickly, and the things themselves are really dangerous. But that happens while there's also a giant spider skull that descends from the ceiling and will start spawning. And as soon as its eggs hatch, you're then going to deal with these little spiders that scuttle along the ground. And eventually you unpick a sequence, like an ideal sequence for how things can go. Because you can quickly destroy a lot of the stuff. You can actually very quickly destroy the big spider if you focus on it. But that means exposing yourself to other risk. And so the whole thing becomes this sort of dance of priorities as you move around. And while you're doing this, you're strafing constantly and jumping, and you can do like strafe jumping like in old Half-Life games and Quake to gain a momentum, which helps. You can do things like fire at the floor in front of you, which causes your bullets to bounce up, which you can use to shoot backwards sometimes if you time it right, but it's really risky because it means looking at the floor. And so while you're in there, you're in that kind of like really great arcade game sort of trance state of like just pure decision making. But it's never quite binary because it's ultimately a 3D game with freedom of movement and AI-driven enemies. There's never a perfect thing you can do. You can never aim at the one place where all the skulls will go and wipe them all out in one stream of bullets. They will move. They will juke around you and stuff like that. And you have to balance all these factors. And as you get up to the point where you're going to beat your own time or whatever, you'll start to feel things get out of control. Like, my experience of getting better at it isn't just getting luckier for longer, like, just sort of edging through. It's almost like I've extended safe territory into the game now, where I know what to do to a sufficient extent that up until 120 seconds, I'm basically okay now. Like, that feels like, even though the game is the same every time you launch it, that feels like territory I've conquered because it's so well known to me. And it's after that it starts to get hairy, and ultimately, like, there's fucking boned serpents leaping out of the ground and more spiders and terrifying shit happening. And the thing that then kind of caps the whole thing off on top of it is the sound, which is amazing and completely essential.
Yeah, you need to be wearing headphones.
And like someone was saying, like, why doesn't this have music? Like, it feels like it's sort of crying out for like the Trent Reznor Quake soundtrack. And actually, it's super important that game doesn't have any music. The soundtrack is just made up of all the ambient sounds of every individual enemy. And every single enemy and event and thing that can happen in the game has an associated sound with it. Like, and your bullets are just like this kind of repetitive, like, sound that is just like the baseline to everything else that's happening. And directional sound is incredibly important, which is why headphones are important. But eventually, what is initially just like I'm in a spooky room full of skulls and everything is screaming, becomes actually like an auditory landscape that you need to learn how to navigate. And that sounds really wanky, but like that's absolutely essential because the little seconds really matter. So like a good example of this is very early on, after you deal with the first couple of waves of spawners, the first big spider spawns. And you have an opportunity at that moment to take it out. But you are disorientated, you're in darkness in 3D space. The only way to know where it's coming down from the ceiling is this little click, 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 click sound it makes as it comes down. And so as soon as you can identify that sound in 3D space and spin to see it, you're then much more likely to have the split second you need that makes the difference between destroying it in one go or not destroying it before it curls up to protect itself. And so that's hard, and that makes a big difference if you can, identify the sound. It's an example of the kind of thing you learn, but it's also then an example of the kind of interesting things that can go wrong. Like, you fail to kill one of the bigger skulls, and you can't fucking hear anything because it's screaming at you. And suddenly, your ability to navigate using sound is diminished by the fact that you previously did worse. And like, it's dead good, basically. Like, it's so simple, so really, really simple, but such a testament to like how you can make a
Tight,
brilliant game just with a few really, really well executed ideas.
tight as a mouse's pocket.
Indeed.
A satanic mouse's pocket.
Yeah.
Bone mouse.
Jerry Skullfelds.
I've played quite a lot of wave survival games, but typically they are top down. This one feels so much different. So much different. Pretend that this is some kind of English sentence.
I'm speaking total bollocks tonight, Marty, though.
It feels substantially different from those because it is in the first person perspective, and that because of the limiting perspective that you have, it does mean that you move through that environment in a different way in order to be able to get a view of the field of battle, to know that you're limiting what can be behind you. Whether you're moving forward, whether you're moving backwards, those things are really, really important because if you're moving backwards, you don't know what you're moving into, and obviously that ties into the fact that sound is so important. But it's really rare. I mean, I have played like shitty Unity asset store games and that have like wave survival in them, which are first person, and they're uniformly terrible on the whole because they just don't. They just descend into chaos because you see an array of enemies in front of you. They occlude other enemies behind them. It just ends up being things are running towards you, spin round, shoot them all. This feels like this has been constructed in one way in which it actually makes you think really carefully about what's in the environment around you and how you navigate around it.
And it's interesting because it comes with a replay feature, which allows you to look at any run you want and see how they did it. And it's really interesting to see how playstyles and comfort zones develop because, like, I like to move. Like, I like to be on the move, and I spend a lot of time circle strafing, and I very rarely look backwards. Like, you can circle strafe and jump circle strafe sort of just inside the turning radius for the skull swarm that is chasing you. And that means you can sort of spray into it for a bit, turn around to locate the next important thing that might kill you, kill that, and then you start to identify moments of sort of peace. And, but I'm almost always firing. And because I'm almost always firing, I actually missed an entire game mechanic. And so I had a moment today where Matt Cox, who's been on the podcast before, whose score I beat yesterday when I got up to my 172.
All right, Jesus Christ.
172 seconds. But I did that, and he'd watched my replay, and he was like, "You realize there's like a power-up mechanic in this, right?" I was like, "What?" Because when you're not firing, certain enemies, so the spawners and the horn skulls drop gems when they die, and if you let go of the trigger, all the gems that are currently on the map will start flying towards you, using pretty much the same kind of trajectory as the skulls, which is a really interesting decision, because when you're not firing, therefore not clearing the things that are converging on you to try and kill you, the things that you want start to converge on you.
I've noticed them fly towards me, but I didn't tie that to what I was doing.
It's when you're not firing, yeah. And so you're encouraged to take these little pauses. And obviously you can pause, like if you pause right when they're right next to you, you can just sort of scoop them up quickly without having to stop firing for too long. But this has this beat. You get enough of them, and then you get a brief moment of bullet time, and then you have a more powerful weapon.
Right. Yeah, I've seen that in videos.
Yeah, because I didn't know that. I thought someone's color balance settings were different to mine because your daggers get redder. But that totally and that's not the humble brag of like, oh, I got that far without knowing it.
Oh, it is though, isn't it?
It is a little bit, but the more important thing is I've now had to rebalance the game, and like I'm now at 126 with incorporating that system, because it's genuinely changed my flow,
right?
Because I was doing this kind of like circle strafey boundy kind of thing where I never let go of the left mouse button.
That's interesting, isn't it? It gets you up to a certain point without that system, and then to progress past that point, you need to make the early game harder for yourself.
Yeah,
that's really clever.
Yeah, and that was only because a friend went, you could be doing this, and it's set me back. He's now since beaten me. Matt's now on 175, so the game is on. But yeah, it's great. I bought it on a whim last night because I'd heard people buying it. It's £4. It's
definitely worth it.
So worth it.
It's been a big discussion on the internet today about the value of games, but
it's good.
That's worth a pint.
It's cheaper than lunch. Like it's it's dead nice.
I've been playing the Hitman beta this weekend. Not having been like a huge Hitman nut in the past, like I know everybody says Blood Money is amazing. I can't remember if I played Blood Money. I know I've played. I played some of the Hitman games. I don't remember which ones. Quite like some of them. They're all right. But yes, give me more sherry, Chris.
God, very well.
That's fine. We're sitting too far apart. Sherry, incidentally, was my grandmother's favourite drink. And when she succumbed to dementia, she used to drink it all the time. Time for a sherry, she'd say at 10 o'clock in the morning. I'd be like, yeah, well, go on then.
That was my grandmother's favourite as well. I still think of her a little bit when I drink sherry.
Maybe it's a generational thing.
My grandmother likes Southern Comfort.
Wow.
She got lasered on her 80th. Drink Southern Comfort responsibly.
Good for grands.
Good for grands.
I don't think that's going to be their new slogan.
But so yeah, Hitman's been mired in a series of slightly shoddy installments recently. I know the last one was
Absolution.
Was terrible, right? I mean, it was very linear.
It was an all right stealth game, but it just betrayed a lot of what makes Hitman great.
Which is that they are murder sandboxes where you have to kill a single person in this big environment full of other people and civilians and other enemies who'll be able to detect who you are, and you can approach the assassination in many different ways, often by disguising yourself as various different people. And this seems to be a return to those roots in a big way. The beta had 2 missions, which I guess are presumably the tutorial missions of the game, although even within that there are quite a lot of different ways that you can complete them.
It only launches with like 2, doesn't it? Because it's episodic.
Oh, really? Okay, right.
The initial thing. It might be 3, but...
I think it's 3.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if it was just those 2, having exposed them in the beta. There's one, but it's quite...
Sherry.
It's quite a cute setup. So, like, you're being... I don't know exactly the shitty storyline of the Hitman game, but it seems like whatever's gone on is canon, and now you've forgotten who you are, possibly. Who knows?
God.
And you're being re-recruited into another...
You've got a barcode on your head.
Nobody can scan it. It's the one code nobody can scan.
Do you remember Barcode Battlers? I wonder what 47's barcode translates into that.
Somebody should try.
Probably like a bag of pilau rice or something.
2-for-1 Dolmio offer.
But you're being inducted into this new assassination organization. In order to pass their test, you need to do these setups, which are recreations of famous assassinations, supposedly. Not real assassinations, but but you're set out onto this boat, but the boat is actually what appears to be a plywood fabrication in the middle of this massive storm drain or something like that.
So wait, is it not real? Are the people real? Or?
The people are real, but they're obviously meant to be employed actors.
But you actually kill them?
Well,
this is a terrible job for them.
It does all the prompts within each mission suggest that you do kill them, but you're told all the weapons have been made safe, so you're not really killing.
But can't you like throw crowbars at people?
Yeah, you can break people's necks, which seems quite final.
And the fiber wire presumably is pretty final.
It looks pretty final, but then it's kind of set up to be a bit of a joke. Like you can detonate somebody and send them fucking flying, and it's kind of
dying.
I think the kind of the achievement for that is something like give the stuntman a raise or something. So it's kind of all.
This sounds weird.
But
actually.
I don't know if I imagine later on you will do what are supposedly real, lethal missions. But the 2 that are in the beta are these weird, strange setups. It feels. I really enjoyed playing it up to a point. There are a lot of different ways that you can enact things, which is a lot of different ways you can kill the target, basically, and a lot of routes through these levels. but being presumably tutorial missions, it guides you a little bit, and there are, at least after you've completed the first mission, it opens up ways of replaying it, which suggests certain possible ways of completing it, which seems to kind of spoil it in a way, really. I mean, you don't feel like you're using your ingenuity at that point, because the things are laid out in your path, and it's just like, well, at this point I could just kill him with rat poison, or I could hit him with a hammer, or I could shoot him, and I tick off a different box in a cut, afterwards. But it wouldn't really feel like I had done it. I don't feel like I'm kind of enacting a huge amount of my own agency on the game as yet. And some things about it work really well. I really like the way the disguises work now. I think it's like different from previous games. So there's different groups of people across the map. There are guards, there are workmen, and there are other people employed in different roles. And if you're disguised as one of them, some of those people, but not all of them, will be considered more observant than others, and will be able to recognize you as not one of theirs. And they'll have a kind of little white marker above them, and as soon as you get in their line of sight, a little detection arrow appears and starts to grow. But there's also this kind of really nice whirring noise. It's kind of like a mixture of white noise and a fan going. It's just speeding up, and then you kind of duck behind a...
That system is the same one that Absolution introduced, where the group of people you're disguised as will be more suspicious of you. But if you're dressed as a cop and a maintenance worker sees you, he won't question it. And it was good in theory, but they also did a weird thing where, because you almost always needed to be a cop to get where you want to go, and there's lots of cops around, you were always under suspicion. So it was basically like your disguises didn't really work that well. And so you'd combine them with stealth, where you just, like, if you duck down, you're less noticeable. And it seemed to have the same metric for noticeability and suspicion. So if you were sneaking as a cop, you were less suspicious than if you're walking as a cop. And so I would like dive between cover dressed in full police uniform, and that will make me less suspicious to this police guy watching me do that.
It's just the sneaky cops.
We're sneaky. That's probably just Sneaky Brad, I remember.
I don't know if it works like that in this. I'm not sure how I'd be able to tell. You're not universally more suspicious to a group of people if you're dressed as them. Only individuals among them. So I think that's how they gauge the difficulty of it. No, it's not randomized. It's the same people each time you play it.
Right.
And they're usually in the same place. So that system works very well. The problem is, it comes apart as soon as suspicion segues into outright detection. The game doesn't really seem to be able to cope with the detection very well at all. From alarm stages don't seem to really play out as you might expect. I tricked the target in one of the levels to sit in the ejector seat of a plane and fired him through the roof.
Good God.
And nobody around him reacted at all. They were just like, And then when his body landed outside, suddenly somebody was alarmed that there was a body on the ground, and they started roaming the area. It was bizarre, and I think it could still be fun to play with because the systems will still react to you in some way, but it completely disrupts the sense of immersion in that fantasy.
You see the video I sent around today?
Yes, I did.
Of Agent 47 crouched in the corner of a room with a collection of objects, including like 2 spanners, a crowbar, a bust, and a ball. And all of them are instant, non-lethal knockouts to the head. Just standing in the corner of the room, throwing them at people.
He's crouched behind a desk, and to throw it, he has to kind of like pop up a little bit and throw it. And there are people just looking straight at him when he does that. And like, there'll be 2 people looking straight at him, and he'll do it, and it'll hit one of them and knock them out. And the other one will just be so shocked by the unconsciousness of his friend, he has no comment on the dude clearly hiding behind the desk.
Yeah, it is kind of trivially easy, actually. If you betray the fantasy and you just game it, it's very easy just to mess with the AI.
That video made me want to play the game more rather than less. And
Yeah,
I'm quite
that's a fun
pleased
thing.
about that in general. I also watched one from, it was also in the PC Gamer Roundup. There was someone just completing the mission in like 1 minute and just getting the right disguise and just using the right combination, like throw a coin over there and shoot that door. So this guard looks that way and that guard looks that way. And that means when you climb over the fence, you can take his disguise and walk straight past that guard. open the door, shoot the guy in the head. It obviously tries to do some kind of like dramatic slow-mo when you kill the actual target, but because this guy is so to the point, he's already like putting the gun away and turning around, and it just looks really weird and awkward that he just has to stand there for a second after doing that, and then he's just out again. And that's it just makes me like it seems much more like Blood Money's spirit of mission. There was an Opera House mission in Blood Money that I could do in 30 seconds because it depended on what equipment you upgraded, and you couldn't do it the first time you encountered that mission. But once you get the upgrade that lets you shoot locks off, it was possible to just kind of sprint past everyone without using any disguise, go to the right door, shoot both bodyguards in the head with a silenced pistol, then shoot the lock off, barge through it, take you out onto a balcony from which you can see another balcony where one of your targets is, headshot him, and then your other target is on the stage at that point, and you can also headshot him if you've got like a scope and an accuracy upgrade for your pistol, and then just run straight back out again, and no one actually attacks you.
In the first level, the target is talking. It ends up talking to another guy who's looking out the window, and the target is using a computer behind a desk just behind him. But the other guy is looking away from him. I thought, well, they're in mid conversation, but I want to see if I can just kill the target here. So I went up behind him, throttled him to death, broke his neck, and the other guy turned around. But even though he was in the midst of conversation with this guy, because the body of the target had fallen behind a desk, he was not alerted by it at all. And he just goes, and then turns back to look out the window again, having aborted his entire conversation.
I guess he doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Having just today coded heat
Sneaky
signatures.
Brad.
Having just today coded heat signatures, a guard AI to notice dead bodies, I can totally see how the code would allow that. If he doesn't have line of sight to the body, he didn't see the body.
Yeah.
Nothing suspicious there. Obviously, his conversation partner is gone, so he stops the conversation, understandably. Has no further comment on the situation.
Played a game that I can't talk about because of embargo, pre-release recently, which has NPCs commenting on bodies that they found system, which is currently bugged, so that NPCs will encounter things they've just killed in that way. So the first thing you hear after you are killed is, "There's a corpse here." As the world's most naive villain finds out what happens when you kill people.
Just coming to terms with the horrible crime he's committed. Oh my God!
What have I done?
So much blood.
Actually, there should be a sort of special Hall of Fame for post-player death enemy barks, because that's a really interesting subgenre of the enemy bark. Like, when you kill them and they see you kill their friends, they always have good barks for that. But Deus Ex had great ones. There were loads of them, but my favourite was when if there's multiple people around and one of them killed you, they would just say, "Anybody else hungry?"
Yeah, that's all I have to say about Hitman. I don't know what it's going to be like yet, really, from that beta. I'm intrigued, but it seems a bit kind of chaotic and manic.
I saw some footage of the beta, and really, the first thing that struck me was that when they bring up the menu, the weapon select menu, which is much the same as it always has been, which is like a ring of things that you cycle around, it's now like a red background, and all things are in white silhouette. And I thought that was really stylish and really cool. And then I watched the video of the guy throwing all the objects, and I couldn't tell what objects he selected the first time. It was just a white circle, and he selected it and threw it. And I thought, the system's rubbish because they reduce it to silhouette. Like any circular thing just looks the same. And so I went back to the video and paused it at the moment he selects that thing, and it's a cue ball.
Oh, right.
So okay, that is a white circle. That literally would look the same if you took out that filter.
Still knocks a man unconscious immediately. An actor knocks an actor unconscious immediately.
Yeah, they have to play along, obviously.
Yeah. If they committed to that high concept that they're all actors, like in the way they did the voice and the animations and stuff, that'd be amazing. Like if your garrote wire was like a piece of soft cotton or whatever, and they would go like, "Oh no, I'm definitely being strangled."
Well, they are all American, even though you're supposedly on a Cuban missile base at one point. But, yeah.
I hope they actually do have sort of local people for local missions. I
think they will when it goes real.
I really liked that, and they've all had like a different tone to them, the Hitman games. And the first one was a little bit all over the place, but the second one, almost all the missions were in foreign countries, and all of the guards just spoke their local language, and so you just had no idea what anyone was saying. And it gave you this feeling of being this alienated outsider and just having no connection to these other people. And so you
actually talk in this one.
Right.
And talk to the target and convince them to do so.
All of them.
Oh, right. But to people. I thought you didn't sort of talk to.
Yeah,
people
you go out to like ask in the first game. You like ask for the bathroom key and things like that.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay.
But I forget what I was saying now. Sorry. Oh yeah, and then the second one did have a lot of Blood Money did have a lot of American missions, but they alienated you from people in other ways and made them all sort of grotesquely sexualized and constantly talking about sex and just that became really weird.
Sounds like my third marriage.
Very good. I'm cautiously optimistic, but they have lost my faith. Like, I will, if it looks good, I'll be cautiously excited about it, but I'm never going to trust them to make a good game after the last one.
No absolution for them.
Oh! Yeah.
No Hitman TM for them. No one doesn't have a title.
What's the other game you've been playing, Chris?
So I've been playing a bit of Street Fighter V, which I wanted to talk about briefly because it's profoundly disappointing. Really, really, really disappointing.
Yeah, so, Tom said it was a bit
yeah, like I knew that its launch had been rough and there'd been server problems and stuff, and it hadn't launched with very much. But it hadn't really occurred to me what that meant until I started playing it. Like, the best analogy I can give for someone who doesn't necessarily know Street Fighter or know kind of the type of thing it is imagine if the new StarCraft had come out and they were like, we don't really need a campaign and we don't even need bot matches because everyone just cares about online StarCraft, and maybe there's like a little tutorial to teach you how to click on things, but then it's just enjoy the wilds of competitive StarCraft. Imagine how miserable that would be for probably the majority of people who buy a StarCraft game when it comes out. Like, obviously that game is famous for its multiplayer and for the depth and complexity of its kind of competitive game at high levels and its skill ceiling and so on. But Blizzard, I think, rightly realized that it would be a complete misstep to recalibrate StarCraft purely around that one thing, playing online against other people, because it's actually the most intimidating, unpleasant way of playing that game. And so they lavish all this attention on the cinematic campaign and that kind of thing, and on bot modes and co-op modes and stuff, to the point where with the latest StarCraft, they were bolting that stuff on, finding more ways to add different ways of playing the basic game beyond 1v1 hyper hardcore, StarCraft multiplayer. Street Fighter is the opposite decision. They have made the decision that game should only be about online multiplayer, to the extent that, and yeah, I know they've announced like a single player campaign coming in June, that kind of thing, but that's not good enough. They're charging £45 for this game now. So what they've launched is the mission statement for the game, and they've said we would like to attract new people, but they simply won't. They've done a terrible job of that. So you load up the game for the first time, and you play a tutorial called Mastering the Basics, where you are Ryu, sorry, just did it wrong, fighting Ken. And it gets you to do a punch, do a kick, do a jump, block a thing, throw a Hadouken, and you're done. And then it's like, you've mastered the basics. Like, no, you fucking haven't. But maybe you would have done it. Could you graduate to something else? There's no arcade mode, so no, like, just fight through a set number of fights until you win. And instead, there's a survival mode, which does allow you to fight against the AI, but you pick it on a per character basis. You pick a difficulty level, and then you sort of fight forever. Basically, you fight the same rotation of characters, so it goes through the entire roster and then repeats again at the start. And there's no randomization to that, so you know that after Laura you'll fight Armika, and after Armika you'll fight Ken, I think, and after Ken it's Cammy or whatever. Like, and it just repeats forever. And after every match, you can spend some of your score so far or not on getting some of your health back or getting a bonus or something like that. So there's a game there, but it feels like a side mode for Street Fighter because it's a curiously, completely unsatisfying way of playing or learning that game for various reasons. One is that it starts you off easy, relatively easy anyway. I mean, I know you can ramp the difficulty up, but you can't sort of necessarily pick who you're going to fight against, and there's no sort of finite end state to it. So if you want to duck in to just sort of play a character for a bit to get a feel for how they tick, your options are play it and lose, which is likely, but because the bar is set so low, probably not likely that soon. play it forever, which you probably don't want to do, or play it and kind of quit when you feel like you've had enough Street Fighter. And bear in mind, this is the only way to play against the computer. Like, it just feels really wrong. And it brings in, and because you don't get your health back, because it's not best of 3 rounds, and you don't get your health back after every fight, you have to buy your health back. It doesn't feel like Street Fighter anyway, because Street Fighter is a best of 3 game where you get your health back, but your charge up bar remains consistent. Instead, you're gambling points on it. So the only way of playing against the computer feels like A, never ends, and B, feels like a what would be like a kind of curio in a more complete game. And actually, I'd forgotten, there is a story mode, but it's 3 missions for each character, and the enemies don't hit you back. As far as I can tell, they're totally passive. I did the Cammy one because Cammy used to be my main, and I mean, maybe in the last one they actually do very basic AI, but obviously the bar is, maybe that's supposed to be your introduction to each character, but it doesn't teach you anything. It just says, okay, beat up this person. And if you've ever played a fighting game, you can do that by pressing any button. If they're not going to block or fight back, it doesn't teach you anything, because it's just you can press the buttons on this character as well. They'll also do punches and kicks. And those are linked by little story clips that are totally disconnect. There's no context for them. They're kind of baffling. They're appallingly voice acted, appallingly written, and even appallingly drawn. They're little comic book panels and stuff, but the art is fucking awful.
Oh, really?
Which is the game itself looks great, but the
I think that's meant. Isn't that one of the Street Fighter artists of old?
Really?
Of your
maybe it is.
I don't know.
It really struck me as shit, but maybe I'm wrong. People might be angry about it. But but yeah, and
bring it on. I say.
But that is both so obviously it's kind of geared for newcomers in one sense that it's totally passive and you just mash buttons for 10 minutes and you're done. But the story it tells is, quote unquote story, is totally impenetrable because it's completely rooted in Street Fighter lore. So I did the Cammy one again, and I happen to know this stuff because I played a lot of previous Street Fighter games, but it is literally just someone shouting the word Shadaloo for 4 minutes and then it's over.
I know what
a bit like
means.
my 4th marriage.
Beautiful to watch that joke evolve.
So that was really crushingly disappointing. But I thought, right, I had this I had this optimism that, well, maybe what this will mean is because there's no option available to them, the people who wouldn't normally go online to play Street Fighter will be online playing Street Fighter. So maybe it'll be a bit friendlier to newcomers online than it used to be, particularly if the matchmaking good. If I just treat this as just a multiplayer game and they go on, queue for a game. And that isn't the case. As far as I can tell, the people who don't play a lot of Street Fighter have just left. Because I've played maybe 10 games online now. Admittedly, not in an ideal situation because I'm using an Xbox pad, which I hate because I was at work playing it and lunch, and I don't have my fighting stick there, so that sucks. And it's a shit Xbox pad as well, an old one with a dodgy stick, so it didn't feel nice anyway. So that's going to be a factor, and that's not the game's fault. But even opening up the matchmaking queue to all players everywhere, not just on the PC, and waiting, I would wait 7 minutes for a game against somebody with, 5 times my level, with shitloads more league points than me, and I would get pasted. And I don't really learn anything because I'm just getting pasted. And that is a game that's ultimately, even more so than StarCraft, about little invisible things that you would never know until someone teaches you, the individual frames of each attack and that and so on. And each new Street Fighter game introduces that. And as far as I know, and talking to people like Nathan Brown from Edge, who know this stuff way better than I do, the game itself, the fighting game they've made, is brilliant.
Yeah, that's what Rich says as well.
Yeah. But the game is dog shit. And I don't think that I'm really uncomfortable giving them a free pass for it. You don't get to bury a good game. Well, but if you're super into Street Fighter and you don't need any help with any of this stuff, I'm sure it's great. And you're simply not getting features that you probably didn't use. But when I was really earnestly trying to learn Street Fighter, and I know that Tom Senior was talking about going on that same kind of journey to try and be good at it, the thing I did to make sure I understood the game with Street Fighter 4 is I meticulously completed the arcade mode up to the highest difficulty with every single character. And I just treat it as like a project. Every weekend I would do another 2 characters. And it created this really good sense of progress, right? I was working along the big grid of characters. I worked along the top bar and then I worked along the second bar until I could do it with all of them. And that taught me a lot about the game. And yeah, it wasn't a substitute for competitive experience against other human beings, but it was an option that gave me a sense of progress. And it gave me fair exposure to all the different characters. And then I'd combine that with dojo training stuff where it teaches you the combos and all the stuff that Street Fighter 4 had that's totally absent from this. And so there's simply no hook there. It's like play an online game that is miserable or not play it.
Baffling. Do you know, is there a reason? Has reason been given or leaked about why it's
They're going to parcel stuff out and do stuff like a post-launch DLC campaign, and there'll be characters and costumes and stuff. But I read that stuff and I understood it, but my instinct, my assumption was that they would be adding that kind of ongoing campaign, which makes sense, on top of a game that would be at its basic level a Street Fighter game. And this feels like it's such a shame because it is still the best fighting game ever made. But like, you know, something like Skullgirls, giga shits on it.
Giga shits?
Yeah, like,
that's a lot of shit.
It is a lot of shit, but this is a lot of shit. Like, I'm really disappointed. Like, especially because they're charging full price for it. Like, if they called it like a, here is the 15 quid starter pack for Street Fighter, and we're going to release more later, and this one's just for the hardcore people, I'd probably be okay with that. But it's absolute. I haven't been that disappointed by a new big game for a long time.
Buy Devil Daggers, everybody.
Devil Daggers is fucking great.
Should we do questions from questions?
I would love to do questions
Why
from questions.
the fuck not?
It's almost as though you can't tell that question is somewhat staged. Andy Rose writes, Dear Crate and Crowbar, I work with adults with learning difficulties, and listening to your podcast when we drive anywhere, they seem to find some comfort, distraction, and fascination in your voices. Take that as you want. Some of them enjoy video games, and we try to play them together as much as possible. They all respond differently to different kinds of games, as anyone will. Some of them enjoy the colours of something like Viva Pinata, some enjoy the familiarity of something like FIFA, and some like the cooperative aspect more than anything as seen in something like the Lego games. My question is, do you have any experience yourself or through previous correspondence regarding people with learning difficulties playing games? Also, do you have any games that you would recommend we give a try? Thank you for such an amazing podcast. It has really changed our car journeys, making them more of a social experience we can talk about later, as well as fueling the newfound hobbies. Take care, Andy Ross.
That's a pretty good letter to receive.
Yeah,
I like that letter.
Oh, yeah.
I like the idea that...
I feel bad about being a little bit tipsy.
Yes, yeah. Now, this is going to sound like a plug for the company that I now work for, but I've heard
Where's that, Marsh?
I'm going to work for Mojang very shortly, and they make a little game called Minecraft, which I hear is very good. But also, it is prior to getting this job, and also, in fact, prior to Owen getting this job, his girlfriend worked for a long time with autistic children and children with learning difficulties, and they were all extremely into Minecraft, as most kids are, I think, but also Pokemon, and those two games seemed to connect with them in a way which helped them in a really profound way. And I think I've heard this from a lot of people who have autistic children. I know Keith Stewart of The Guardian says that his kid was really helped by playing Minecraft. I'm not entirely sure what it is about that game which does it for those kids, but like
I feel like it's like a world that makes sense. Like everything's very logical and everything's broken down into these blocks that are all of set and fixed size, but you also have limitless creativity. So if you're really creative and have loads of sort of creative energy, you can go and build something amazing or just get obsessed with some giant project. But if you're really like logical and don't have a lot of like spontaneous creativity, you can just make simple things work or set up redstone circuits and make complicated things work and just keep going in whatever area that your brain works well best at.
And if you like neither of those things, it's just a nice place to be as
well. Yeah, there's sort of between the gaps of when you can't think of what you want to do or you just don't have anything to do, then it's still a game and you still have like things you need to take care of and stuff like that.
I can see where Pokemon fits into that system actually, because it also presents a world that behaves according to really fixed rules. Like it's also a grid-based game in terms of how it constructs puzzles and things, but also it has that kind of juxtaposition of a incredibly rigid, logic-driven combat system between a kind of rigid taxonomy of monsters and creatures and stuff, but that's always juxtaposed with a story that's ultimately quite kind of positive and about sort of positive relationships and things like that. So, I mean, I like Pokemon for those reasons. So
Yeah.
I'd recommend it to anyone on that basis, but yeah.
I don't know anything about learning difficulties, and this is a complete stab in the dark, but there is, for people who have difficulty communicating but want a cooperative experience, there's a game called Way, where it's a platformer that's side-on, and it's kind of split screen. The screen is split across the horizontal middle, so the top half is one player and the bottom half is the other player. And you don't actually play on the same computer. So you play it online or networked or whatever, and you can see the other player walking around, but on your screen, let's say you're the blue player, you will see some blue platforms and obstacles on both your screen and both your level and their level, but they can't see the blue ones. And there are some red obstacles on your side that you can't see. And so you have to communicate, but you're not allowed to talk to each other. There's no text or voice chat. You can only communicate by moving your arms. And so you just have to sort of come up with your own language for kind of like pointing up to stop, or pointing forwards, or like keeping your arm up and then suddenly moving it forwards to tell them when to go, because there's like a big blue crushing block in front of them and only you can see when it's clear for them to go. And if they go at the wrong time, then they could die. It could be stressful because it is stressful. But it forges this great connection between you and the other person. I played it at GDC like about 5 years ago. And after playing like a cool indie game, usually the creator's standing around and you want to go and talk to the creator. And after playing this, I wanted to go and talk to the person I've been playing with, because we just had this kind of weird experience together where we communicated and stuff. But I had no idea who this person was. I'd never seen them before. And we'd never exchanged a single word. Actually, until the very end of the game, where you kind of get to sort of draw with your hands, and we ended up sort of writing a message to each other. And I wrote like, "That was nice" on the wall or something. But it's by a guy called Chris Bell, who previously worked at That Game Company. And actually, That Game Company's Journey would be another good kind of...
That's a really good choice.
That's much more accessible in that I don't actually know... I mean, for Way, you'd need two people on different computers. For Journey, it's not on PC, unfortunately, but on PlayStation, you just start playing and you'll have another player in the world at various times, but there's no verbal communication. And that's probably a sort of easier thing to get into because you don't have to do anything to make it happen. It'll just happen automatically and there's less kind of pressure or stress on it.
Nice games.
Indeed.
That's ultimately what we're here to discuss, Mark.
Frank writes, "Dear Safe and Plasma Cutter, thanks to Tom Francis' excellent game-making tutorial series," I agree, "I am now well underway with creating my very first video game. Yay me! Thank you very much for the tutelage, Sensei Francis."
Sensei.
Sensei has noticed you.
Now, seeing as most of you have some experience with writing in one form or another, the question I lay before you is as follows. How should I go about writing a small story for my game that's not too grand a scope to write for a single person, but isn't too linear in order to still retain some player agency? Or should I just go with the tired and true but slightly banal bad guys capture the princess, go save the princess? The save princess route would be a lot easier than actual world building, of course, but then again, I don't know how to code when I started this adventure either, so I figured why not give this writing thing a shot as well. Keep on podding, Frank. P.S. Gameplay-wise, the game is an old-school Zelda em-up, if that matters, with twin-stick shooter controls like Nuclear Throne and a stamina bar like Dark Souls. My, how fancy.
It does sound fucking fancy. It sounds fucking great, actually. I really like that idea. It's an interesting question. I don't know...
Don't do Save the Princess.
Yeah.
Even if you do have to go super basic. I mean, the plot of Nuclear Throne is, can you reach the Nuclear Throne? They never tell you what the Nuclear Throne is. Sorry, I keep dropping my phone.
Do you just throw your phone through your own legs?
Yeah, it was kind of balancing on one leg, then I crossed my legs, and now it's
like a weird geometry bug, isn't it?
It clipped through my leg, because there's a portal to another dimension. Nuclear Throne is just get to the Nuclear Throne, and it never tells you what the Nuclear Throne is or why you'd want to go there.
I would suggest, if you want a quick way to introduce your game, I would suggest going as minimal as possible on storyline. If it's a Zelda-like game, I think it depends how you really want it. If you want to seed your stories, if you want a story at all, then I think seeding it in some way in the world is the better way to do it than to give you the, here are the 2 paragraphs of text to set up the game, because nobody gives a fuck. When you present that, it's always going to feel throwaway and pointless if you just give people a setup and then let them do their own thing for the rest of the game.
Yeah, having the story sort of on some kind of optional collectible or object that people can go up and look at and interact with if they want to is really good, because people who want it still get it, but people who don't want it aren't gated by it, and they won't get sort of pissed off about it if it's, it actually kind of frees you up to write more story if you want to. Sounds like maybe you don't, but the thing about retaining player agency, the main thing I'll caution against is doing branching plots where you need unique content for each branch. That was my plan for Gunpoint originally, and then I very quickly realized, like, I don't have time to make levels that not everyone is going to play. Like, everyone needs to play every level, because I can only make about 20, and that's only just long enough for a 3-hour game. And so I ended up... There is a branching plot in Gunpoint, but it doesn't change what missions you go on. It's like... one person wants you to break into this building and delete a certain recording off this terminal, and the other person wants you to get into the same terminal and upload it publicly. So there's an option as to which path down the story you go, but it involves playing the exact same mission and getting to the exact same objective. And that's great, because you don't have to make content that not everyone sees, and also people don't notice. I've heard loads of people say, I wonder what happens if you do it the other way. I'm like, nothing, mate.
I'd say atmosphere is far more desirable than story. Like, if you have an atmosphere, if you can express an atmosphere about the world your game takes place in through your art, sound, mechanics, whatever, then people will want to know more.
The world should have a story, but you needn't.
Yeah,
as the player.
But even so, like, if you can convey through the atmosphere that this is a place worth being interested in, then you can almost not tell a story, and the player can tell themselves a story, which is kind of ultimately the best agency. And you've done no writing whatsoever, and they'll get a huge amount out of it, which is like Dark Souls is the best example of that.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
If Dark Souls has, Dark Souls is almost entirely storytelling through atmosphere, because if the atmosphere wasn't there to back up the things it's saying about, divine right, and all the rest of it, it wouldn't matter, because you could basically, like, that's the thing. Like, the thing about Dark Souls isn't the writing, it's the delivery. And if you wrote out Dark Souls' plot, it'd be very easy to stick it into a game where it would just be nonsense lore that no one gave a shit about a bunch of gods with stupid names that no one cares about. But because of the way it's told,
fine Welsh names, I think you'll find.
Fine Welsh names. But because of it is all in the telling, and minimal is better. And I say that as a noted story wank.
It's also good to sort of figure out how you're going to tell the story, like in what form, whether it's going to be conversation. Dialogue trees is a bunch of work that you might not want to take on. If it's going to be audio diaries lying around, not audio diaries, but like text diaries lying around, then that suggests one kind of story. And if it's going to be a single paragraph at the start of the game that you never interact with again, that's a different kind of story. So if it's like a single paragraph, you want some kind of big, ridiculous, sweeping idea that you don't have to back up particularly, and you can just set the scene and move on. If it's going to be a series of things you find lying around, then the kind of System Shock approach works pretty well, where there's a small cast of characters you keep hearing about, and they have a little drama that you sort of hear about secondhand.
Environmental storytelling. Kind of storytelling you don't need to write a single word unless you're scrawling it in blood on the walls. It seems to be the way to do it.
Yeah, but blood graffiti actually is the best way to tell a game story. Just do the Saving Princess thing, but just write it out in blood on the wall.
No, but I think Valve's advice, which was, I think it was Half-Life 2 this came across, where every environment, they tried to imagine it as they came up with 3 stories for that environment, 3 things that had happened in it, which was interesting, and drew that into the world. They weren't necessarily things that as a player you would be able to walk into the environment and say, oh, this sequence of things happened here, although that sometimes was the case. So you'd walk into an environment and you'd see barriers that had been hastily erected but then destroyed, and obviously there were a big pile of corpses outside, and you know what had happened there. But I mean, sometimes it's less obvious than that.
So it was a corpse sale at Christmas, and it was really popular. But no one had any trolleys, so they had to leave them outside.
There you go. Perfect analysis. That unlocks the entirety of Half-Life's mysterious storyline. But I think that's the best way to do story, is to make your environment think about why things have occurred in your environments. Think about why they look the way they do. Come up with stories for those environments, even if they aren't written out in actual text.
The nice thing with like a small game is that you can just go nuts with like what the story is. I don't mean like have masses of it, but I just mean the concept can be ridiculous. It can be completely untenable. It can make no sense. Basically, you can just go for something. It's better to be different and bizarre than to save the princess. Basically, if you write Save the Princess, there's a million of those out there, and we're kind of sick of them. So you'd have to write a really extraordinary and unusual one to get anyone's attention. But if you like, the backstory for Heat Signature at one point was going to be that you're so far from the rest of the galaxy that since you left, or since everyone here left that the rest of the galaxy, there's actually been an enormous war, and you have no idea how it's working out. But just over the course of the game, one by one, the stars would go out.
Oh wow!
And the rest of the universe basically gets completely destroyed in the course of weeks. But it happened, 25 years ago, and you're 25 light years away, so you're just now seeing it. And so you gradually realize that this place is the only place left in the universe. And if you don't have to back it up, then you can write ridiculous shit like that. Dylan writes, "Greetings to you fine folk. I was saddened to hear that Marsh is leaving the pod. I hope you will add in a new segment to the broadcast where you bring him in occasionally via Skype. I treasure the species of insight that he often has. I find it very different from consensus."
Reptile.
I find it different from consensus often, but entirely reasonable at times, and oh so very human.
Don't do that face, Marsh.
That's the one thing I'm not.
He's fooled you all.
Pulling off his face mask.
Nevertheless, it is impossible to be sad about anything that sees more Pip in the show.
Hey.
Exactly.
Guilty for being so contrarily pleased. Give him a hug from me, then also punch him. We'll just call that quits. My question text. I want to poll you about your opinions on on the best example for a particular, very foundational game mechanic. Specifically, the best, most satisfying, most flexible first-person moving around movement mechanic. It can be first or third person, it just has to maintain some kind of sense of attachment to the single protagonist thing. Not the most realistic, I mean the kind that ideally allows you to teleport and blink around, but still maintain a sense of orientation. Or at least move around quickly. I'm trying to imagine what the perfect user interface for tomorrow's Snow Crash and William Gibson future will feel like. I like Strike Vector's ability to switch between modes that have different levels of mobility. I think Dishonored did it well, as did Shadow of Mordor. Obviously with the stabby bits removed. Can you think of better examples in your own gaming experience?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what he means when he brings up the UI part of that, because movement seems like a different issue to
It sort of
UI.
becomes about
I guess
like virtual reality embodiment at that point, which is because that's the Snow Crash reference. Which
Yeah. That was like the internet is a sort of physical space that you walk around, and so to visit a website you'd have to sort of teleport somewhere, and so the world is the user interface for the internet, basically.
Oh,
But
I don't see.
that's
But,
not.
okay.
That's a different question. Because until that part of the question, I'd probably say Quake, and it's and the way it evolved through the rest of the Quake engine games and gained all those weird engine quirks. And yeah, I'm only thinking about that at the moment because after 172 seconds of Devil Daggers, you start to realize some things. And one of the things is that Quake knew how good strafing was.
Very speedy to play those games now, which feels extremely good. I'm looking forward to playing Doom, actually, because that seems fast, if not almost faster than Quake from some of the videos I've seen.
I never had any sort of inkling how fast you move in Doom until I first played a multiplayer game and saw other people moving at that speed. I'm like, what the fuck is he doing? It's like a motorbike.
I never totally fallen in love with any first-person lassoing, grappling thing. I know some people have a lot of fondness for those. I never really loved it.
Yeah. I mean, actually, funny enough, when about like the best first-person movement mechanic, I always think of skiing in Tribes. That's the one that...
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah,
That's one of the only ones
great.
that has a real sense of momentum to it, and you can sort of like have moments of satisfaction and exhilaration just from moving around. And then the reason I thought that just then was that Tribes Vengeance had a first-person grappling hook that was fucking terrible.
New Thief is surprisingly good.
What? Huh. Nah.
Like
In what way?
The swooping mechanic is genuinely great.
Oh, yeah. Good swooping. That's
That was
true.
Marsh
Tops.
being different from the consensus, but entirely reasonable and oh so very human.
Very human.
What? Nah.
His human honks when he wants to attract people.
I never want to attract people.
Yeah, and the way your character's hands move dynamically across objects in the environment. You
That's
sort of
true,
feel
yeah.
the edges of stuff and grab things. It's very tactile. It's not a great
It's
game.
a shame
but...
you couldn't drop down off things. It wouldn't let you drop down off, or
Oh yeah, like
it was very prescriptive in a lot of the ways in which you navigated those levels.
it felt very good, I thought. And I thought the sort of glidey, swoopy thing, even though it's not a thing humans can actually do, sort of elegantly replaced Dishonored's blink without requiring a supernatural thing. Like it looks like something humans should be able to do, but try and do it in real life, and I have, and you can't.
Oh.
This is weird, but this isn't like one that's actually been used, but the most sort of natural, intuitive way of navigating huge amounts of space comes up in things like Sins of a Solar Empire and Supreme Commander, where you have these vast, Sins of a Solar Empire is an actual solar system, and Supreme Commander is massive maps. And the way both those games work is you zoom out, and then wherever the cursor is when you zoom in, that's where it focuses on. And so you can traverse vast amounts of space by just zooming out and then zooming in again and moving your mouse. And actually, if you had like a first-person game where when you scrolled the mouse wheel back, it just shot you up into the sky, and you started to look down. If you're talking about navigating a massive virtual world for the sake of making a sort of virtual internet or something, that'd be kind of a cool way to do it.
Bulletstorm, surely, for its skidding.
Skidding.
I love any game where you get to move forward at great velocity and knock other enemies over or out the way. I fucking love that. Was one of my favourite things in Mass Effect. Any game where you get to kind of go "Whoa!" and then pelt forward, knocking people out of the way.
Like the Vanguard thing.
Yeah, that's like a proper game boner for me. But
Love to shove.
but Bulletstorm, you could skid, and you could skid and knock enemies over, but you could also skid pretty much indefinitely. You just, there's no real, any slowdown.
You had a totally frictionless arse.
And it felt and looked great.
There's a game about skidding on
and
your arse.
Skidding was pretty fun too. Sorry.
Oh, God.
There's a game about skidding on your arse indefinitely called Action Henk. It's not first person, side on kind of like time, the sort of race game, I guess. You're trying to get the best time while sliding around a sort of stunt course on your ass. A person on the internet writes, well, this is a heavily edited version of his email. Some trivial tidbits have a habit of worming their way deep within your brain tissue. These resilient little factoids are of little use, save the rare opportunity to share this dollop of knowledge when a conversation finally turns to a related topic. Facts like how most mozzie bites are perpetuated by female mozzies. This is because, for many species of mosquito, the female requires a parasitic blood feed to gain certain specific nutrients that allow her to produce eggs. I wonder where this is going. Do you have any otherwise useless, fascinating facts that could form the basis of an interesting video game? Do you think a game built on the aforementioned mozzie could in fact be interesting? Maybe some kind of survival stealth game where you must ensure the continued existence of your species by flying around hunting humans and other animals to get your blood feed whilst avoiding being splattered, zapped or sprayed in the process. Perhaps it could even play with the supposed differences in perceptions that flying insects are believed to have. A person on the internet.
I think there is a really good game to be made out of mozzies, actually, or rather the extermination of them. There are lots of initiatives at the moment on how to deal with malaria. One of them, as championed by Bill Gates, is the complete eradication of the mosquito, which seems slightly sinister to me in some ways. Like, I'm not sure full-scale xenocide is maybe a great goal for the human species. On the other hand, malaria is pretty shitty.
Yep.
Hasn't malaria killed like 1 in 5 humans ever?
I think some estimates 1 in 2. Like most people who've ever lived have died of malaria.
It isn't good, and our drugs are rapidly becoming useless against it. And also, with global warming, the spread of malaria on mosquitoes will be ever greater. It is a big problem, and killing mosquitoes is a really interesting problem, because even if you kill a whole bunch of mosquitoes, you haven't killed the environment in which it is attractive for them to procreate. And so even if you kill off a whole swathe of them by various methods, they're doing genetic modification amongst other things, other mosquitoes will come back there. And I think you could make a very interesting, like every Extend Extra style game where you detonate pockets of mosquitoes while trying desperately to stop other mosquitoes coming in and inhabiting those environments. Maybe with, but also I think you could do it by some. There are all those games where you genetically modify creatures to make them better and better. And your aim in this would be to genetically modify creatures to make them worse and worse, while at the same time making them capable of procreating to the extent that Darwinian evolution would allow them to dominate their species while rendering them basically ineffective in many ways.
Video games for mosquitoes.
I see. Sorry, I see what you mean. Yeah. Get them into Star Wars miniatures games.
Yeah. Hey.
Yeah. I think that could be a really good game.
That's a very good idea, yeah.
I don't have any good facts, though. I'm completely factless. All of my good facts, which I learnt at university, have now been fucking taken by QI. It's really annoying. I come up with a great anecdote and say, oh, yeah, I saw that episode of QI as well. I'll be like, fuck you. Fuck you, Stephen Fry. I knew that before you did. Twat.
One of my friends from university literally became a writer on QI.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
He's part of the problem.
Yeah.
We need to kill him.
That's how the university fact got into QI.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't have a good fact, but every time I see like a picture, a microscopic picture of bacteria, I always think that seems like a ripe area for video games. And like Spore, you start as a cell, but there's this particular look that the like actual microscopic photography has. That's these like glowing, bumpy shapes that actually, like the one I saw was I think zoomed in on like a tick's eye or a flea's eye. So it's one of those things where it keeps zooming in and zooming in and zooming in to a crazy extent, and it zooms in until the eye fills the screen. It turns out the eye is made up of these tiny little plates, and then it zooms in on one of those plates until like the nodules on the plate fill the screen, and then the nodules are just this like sort of dusty, bumpy dome thing. And it looks fascinating and kind of beautiful in a weird way. And I guess it's a consequence of like how they have to filter the picture so that you can see anything. But it looks like an inverted photo. It's kind of like the dark bits are glowing and or not the dark bits, but the recesses are glowing and the more prominent bits are darker. And yeah, I always feel like it could just be something totally unrelated to actual science, and it's just like a fucking RTS where you fire globules at other globules or something. But just that aesthetic is so cool that it would be great.
Glob v glob, you could call it.
I also kind of want, since I'm making a game with zoom that goes from ridiculously small to ridiculously huge, I kind of want to make one that just has infinite zoom now, and like on every scale you're trying to take over some larger organism, and then when you do, that becomes your sort of player character on the next level of zoom, and then you have to take over the next biggest thing.
Oh yeah.
And it just keeps zooming out and zooming out and zooming out, and so your progress, rather than being number of seconds survived like in Devil Daggers or level reached as it is in other games, it's just the magnification level that you reached. And that could go on forever. It would have to also be repetitive. I mean, with the random generation, you can kind of make things look a bit different, and you could have a different set of parameters for the random generation on each level. So like at low level, they're all blobby shapes, and the next level, they're all like weird triangles or something, so that they have different feel at least.
Read a really interesting story a while ago, and I can't remember the exact details, but about the Soviet officer during the Cold War who basically averted World War III on a hunch.
Oh, right.
It was basically there was sort of aware that their missile early warning system would sometimes register a false positive if like the sun was reflecting off clouds in a certain way, that kind of thing, and they all knew this. And it happened, and it declared what would have been an enormous nuclear launch by the United States against the Soviet Union. And this one guy on the night shift in a nuclear bunker outside Moscow somewhere just went, I think this is probably not. And so sat on it, so didn't authorize the retaliatory nuclear strike that would have started World War III. And he was right. But I'd quite like to make like a Papers, Please style game where instead of like having to learn the documentation for like different countries, you have to kind of understand something of the kind of engineering of a whole different bunch of nuclear like detection, like missile detection technology, satellites, and kind of understand what can go wrong, and then pass problems and ultimately make like a yes or no call based on them, which I suppose is very Papers, Pleasey, like trying to pass a bunch of information and trying to boil it down to a yes or no, but with like really serious consequences for getting it wrong, and maybe randomize the exact design and potential flaws of those systems in a little way, and then it would be like something like Devil's Daggers, how long you last before you accidentally fail to retaliate or retaliate, because the moment you press yes, it's over, but the moment we press no at the wrong time, it's also over.
Actually, I do remember an interesting fact I learned recently, which is the number of possible ways to shuffle a deck of cards is a number so unimaginably vast, it can't express it in any meaningful way to you. And there's a sort of like 500-word attempt to express the size of this number that's like, if every day you took one drop of water from the oceans of the world and like put it in a different place, I can't remember quite how it works, and then by the time if every time you emptied all of the Earth's oceans, however long that takes, if every time you did that, you added one sheet to a stack of paper, and then you started all over again, refilled the oceans and did that all over again. And then you kept on stacking paper until it reached the moon. And then when it reached the moon, you reset that and did some other absurdly laborious task. You would still not exhaust, if every time you did that, you shuffled a deck of cards, every second of every day that you're doing that, you shuffled a deck of cards, you would still never get the same thing twice, or you'd never run out of combinations. So for a game, what you'd have to do, the only challenge you have to solve is how do you convert an ordering of the deck of cards into an interesting level of a game? And if you can do that, then you have a lot of interesting levels. So like maybe just each card type is a different enemy, and the different suits give them different properties, and then the order in which you fight them in some way has some great knock-on effect. Like after you've fought a diamond, you're tougher for a while. There's actually a weird story about two people made a roguelike that involves a deck of cards, right? I think the deck of cards, like if you get heart, it heals you, and if you get a spade, I think it's an enemy or something. And two different people made almost exactly the same game. And as far as anybody can tell, neither of them copied each other. It was just a weird case of people sort of coming up with the same thing at the same time. Toffee Jedi writes, "Hello, esteemed yeoman of the bar. I wish to purchase a pint of your finest answers. On last week's podcast, Marsh told the story of killing the final boss in the new Tomb Raider using a bean can. This brought to mind the end of Baldur's Gate 2 and the fight against Irenicus. Knowing that he was a very powerful wizard and he had all the spell, I sent my rogue forward while hidden till I knew where the edge of Irenicus's vision was, I suppose. I then proceeded to summon, using a wand, a vast horde of low-level monsters to fight him. Although they couldn't hurt him, Irenicus just let loose with all his most powerful spells. 20 minutes later, he was down using his first-level spells, at which point I sent my party in. There's something quite satisfying about watching the final protagonist resorting to using a dagger against a fully fresh party. It didn't last long. So my question is, when have you played with the systems of a game to put things massively in your favour? Thanks, Toffee Jedi."
I didn't have an answer for that. I just thought it was an amusing anecdote.
Yeah, it's a really good story.
I don't have an answer to that specific question, but I do have something similar to what he's describing, which is the final boss of Prince of Persia, the very first Prince of Persia. There was the sword fighting in that. You really just had a block and an attack, and when you attacked, you moved slightly further forwards, and so everyone, you would kind of like wait for them to come to you, and then you would block their attack and then attack back, and that would win you most fights. And I think there were only two enemies that you couldn't do that on, and one of them was the final boss. The first one, it was like just a fat guy who would never come towards you, so you had to go towards him, and it was really difficult to kind of block, get your attack in or block his thing before he hurt you. And then the final boss, I think he would come towards you sometimes, but he would just block every single attack you ever did. And there was no exceptions. There was no way to ever actually get a blow past him. And so the thing you had to notice was that every time he blocks, it moves him just a little bit back, just a couple of pixels back. And so if you just keep on hitting him again and again and again, eventually he just moves back and back and back, and there's just a ledge. Eventually he just falls off the edge of the ledge. And that's how you defeat the final boss. And it's not like a player exploit or anything. That is how you're supposed to do it. It's just, it requires a sort of a moment of genius to realize like, yeah, it is impossible to hit him, but that's not actually what I need to do here. Let's see. Matthew Turner writes, "Best gaming coffee table books. Art, retrospectives, etc."
I have a list of suggestions here, partly because lots of our friends have written them recently. There is obviously the unsurpassed Brief History of Video Games by Richard Stanton.
All right.
It is a very fine book. There's also Alex Watches, who has also been on the pod, Britsoft, an oral history, which is super good. Death by Video Game by Simon Parkin, also very good. And the Bitmap Brothers, if you're interested in the kind of early days of British development, that is a superb book. And the Bitmap Brothers have given a huge amount of access to the writer Duncan Harris, and there's some beautiful artwork in it. I forget who the name of the artwork, the artist is who did the stuff for Bitmap Brothers games, but it's properly gorgeous. But the Dark Souls Design Works books are really good as well. Lots of concept art in them, and really enlightening interviews at the back with the game directors. There's coming up is You Died, a Dark Souls companion by Kes MacDonald and Jason Killingsworth, which I imagine will be very good based on the caliber of the writers. And Raising the Bar, obviously, is a fantastic book about the making of Half-Life and Half-Life 2. Or is it Half-Life 2? I can't remember.
Heartbreaking. Yeah, it's mostly Half-Life 2. Has some awesome like concept art for things they never did, and it has a lot of stuff that is very clearly what they were going to do for episode 3. Like things that they sort of planned that they had to cut from the original Half-Life 2 but there's a sort of Arctic finale, and that's so where episode 2 is about to go. And so that's really interesting. Like, as much today as it was when it first came out.
And there's Masters of Doom as well, which is a classic work narrating the story of Doom's creation. Although it's been somewhat sad by the author's follow-up, which was about the making of GTA, which cribbed very, very heavily from a feature that Tony Mott wrote for Edge magazine. Quite even it name-checked him in a footnote, but then went on to proceed to wholesale recreate the interviews he had done. Well, not wholesale, but like a lot of that stuff seems to come from the interviews from a feature in Edge magazine with a slant on them which isn't clear that the author himself was not present at the time those things were narrated. Which feels, I mean, it's not plagiarism by any means, but it makes you wonder about not the authenticity necessarily of the story told in Masters of Doom, but it makes you question the intimacy with which it's told and the extent to which some of the ways in which quotes are presented to you with narrative trappings, like they are told to you and their adjectives applied to the people who are saying those things. You wonder if the author was really present there to witness that stuff, because he wasn't present when Tony Mott did those interviews, which he then characterizes in ways which Tony Mott does not characterize. Anyway.
Quinn writes, what is the worst designed ability in a video game and why? Bad implementation or unused potential count? I wanted to answer this because the Tribe's Vengeance grappling hook, which I've already mentioned in this very podcast.
It's probably the only time it's ever been mentioned in any context as well.
It's actually, I think in multiplayer it's probably fine because you sort of latch onto vehicles as they fly by, but it has a whole series of levels in the single-player campaign where you're a child using this grappling hook to escape a palace. But they couldn't program it to wrap around things, so if it touches anything, it breaks. So it's like your challenge is to latch onto the ceiling and rope yourself up to this ledge, but there's light fittings all across the wall, and if the rope touches any of those, it breaks the rope. And it's just exercise in massive agony. Another terrible graphic in video games. Actually, this one is fine, but I hated it so much initially that I want to mention it. Is Axiom Verges, which is a great game, and it has lots of movement abilities. And eventually I got a grappling hook, and I was like, oh my god, this is so going to,
It's a Metroidvania style game, right?
Yeah.
Slide on 2D, very retro, pixely graphics, really cool, like interesting environments and stuff. And the grappling hook, it just doesn't work like you expect a grappling hook to. You kind of expect you're going to be swinging from things and sort of like extending it and wrapping it around things. But the controls are like, I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's like the same button disconnects it as... the button to swing on it also disconnects it or something like that. And really, once you learn how to use it, it's quite easy. It's just you jump and you hold the grappling hook button and it just extends your jump a bit. But if you're trying to use the grappling hook, it's maddening. So that is not by any means the worst designed ability in a video game. It's just one that makes you think it's going to be something wrong.
I don't think I have an answer for this that isn't Tom's least favourite grappling hooks.
I could do like a top 10 one day. I just care a lot about grappling hooks. That's all the questions we have time for.
And that's the end of the podcast. Goodbye. Oh, wait. Not before we say...
Outros.
Indeed. How you can contact us. Would you like to send us more questions? Of course you would. Send them to questions@crateandcrowbar.com, or you can post them on our forum, which is at crateandcrowbar.com/forum, or you can do Twitter. Thank you for mouthing that to me. I've had too much sherry.
We've all had too much sherry, Marty.
Tweet us at crateandcrowbar. At Creating Crowbar.
That's the end of the sentence.
Join us as well on our Discord, which is got a name and an address which is too hard to remember. So go to our website, creatingcrowbar.com, and follow the links in the sidebar to our Discord channel. There's lots of nice people there. They're saying nice things. Listen to them. And you can also listen to us on the Twitter. We're not necessarily saying as nice things, but you can listen to us all the same. I'm Marsh Davis on Twitter. Who are you, Chris? I forgot your name. Sorry.
I'm C. That's C for Chris. THURSTEN. That's Thurston, my other name.
James?
Hi,
Oh,
Tom.
sorry, Tom.
Pentadact. PENTADACT.
Thanks for
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Take a break.